Emma had always been the life of the party. Her infectious laughter and magnetic charm could light up any room. For years, her husband, Mark, adored her for it. But lately, the spark in their marriage had dimmed. Work, bills, and the monotony of daily life had taken their toll. One Friday evening, Emma told Mark she'd be going out with some girlfriends to unwind. Mark kissed her on the cheek and reminded her not to stay out too late. She smiled sweetly and promised to be back by midnight. What she didn't tell Mark was that she had been texting a man named Ryan for weeks. They'd met at a coffee shop where Emma often went to read. He was younger, confident, and had a way of making her feel alive again. That night, she wasn't meeting her girlfriends, she was meeting him. The night unfolded like a whirlwind. Emma and Ryan laughed over drinks, their chemistry undeniable. By the time the clock struck midnight, they were in a hotel room, entangled in a moment of passion she hadn't felt in years. The next morning, Emma woke up to a flood of emotions. Guilt gnawed at her, but she pushed it aside. It was just one night, she told herself. Mark doesn't have to know. She decided to return home with a cheerful demeanor, hoping it would mask her betrayal. When Emma walked through the door, she wore a radiant smile, greeting Mark as if nothing had happened. But the moment she stepped inside, she froze. Mark was sitting at the dining table, his face pale, his eyes red from crying. "Emma, sit down," he said, his voice trembling. Confused and alarmed, she obeyed. On the table lay her phone unlocked. Mark had seen everything, the texts, the location history, even the pictures she had carelessly forgotten to delete. "I trusted you," Mark said, his voice breaking. "I thought we were going through a rough patch, but I never imagined this." Emma's smile faded instantly. Panic set in as she tried to explain, to justify, but her words only made it worse. The regret hit her like a tidal wave, suffocating and inescapable. Mark stood up, his composure crumbling. "I don't know if I can ever forgive you," he said before walking out the door. Emma was left alone, staring at the remnants of her betrayal. Her one-night escape had shattered the life she'd taken for granted. As the hours passed, Emma realized the depth of her mistake. Her smile that morning had masked a secret, but now it was a permanent reminder of everything she'd lost. Days turned into weeks, and Emma's world unraveled further. Mark moved out of their shared home, leaving behind an emptiness she couldn't fill. The silence was deafening. Every corner of the house reminded her of him, their laughter, the shared dreams, and the love she had so carelessly betrayed. Emma tried reaching out to him, sending countless messages and leaving voicemails filled with apologies and pleas for a second chance. But Mark's responses were sparse, cold, and distant. The warmth in his voice, the love in his eyes, everything that once made her feel safe, was gone. One afternoon, Emma decided to take drastic measures. She showed up at Mark's temporary apartment, clutching a handwritten letter and trembling with a mixture of hope and desperation. She knocked softly, half expecting him to ignore her. But to her surprise, he opened the door. Mark stood there, his face weary, and his eyes filled with a pain that pierced Emma's soul. She handed him the letter, her voice barely above a whisper. "Please read this. I don't expect you to forgive me, but I need you to understand how sorry I am." He hesitated but took the letter. "I'll read it," he said, his tone neutral. "But I'm not promising anything." In the letter, Emma poured out her heart. She confessed her selfishness, her insecurities, and the void she had tried to fill in all the wrong ways. She admitted she had been too scared to confront their issues and had instead made the worst mistake of her life. Mark read the letter later that night. It brought him to tears, not because it softened his anger, but because it reminded him of the love they once shared, the love Emma had so easily thrown away. The next time they met, Mark didn't mince words. "Your letter was heartfelt, Emma, but words can't erase what you did. You broke my trust, and trust is the foundation of everything. Without it, we have nothing." Emma nodded, tears streaming down her face. "I know, but I'll do whatever it takes to fix this. To fix us." Mark sighed deeply. "I need time. And maybe I'll need to find myself without you for a while." That was the moment Emma realized she couldn't rush his healing. She couldn't undo the damage with apologies or promises. The road to redemption was long, and it might never lead back to Mark. In the months that followed, Emma sought therapy to understand her actions and work on herself. She learned to confront her flaws and the fears that had driven her to such destructive choices. Meanwhile, Mark focused on his own healing, leaning on friends and family to rebuild the parts of himself Emma's betrayal had shattered. One day, they crossed paths at a mutual friends gathering. Their eyes met, and for a moment, it felt like time had stopped. There was no anger in Mark's gaze this time, but there was also no guarantee of reconciliation. As they exchanged polite greetings, Emma realized that no matter how much she longed to go back, she could only move forward. Whether Mark would ever be part of her future again was uncertain, but she was determined to live in a way that honored the lessons she had learned, a life of honesty, accountability, and, above all, respect for the people she loved. Mark walked away from the conversation with a sense of closure. He had forgiven Emma, but forgiveness didn't mean forgetting. For both of them, it was a bittersweet ending to a chapter they'd never forget, a painful reminder of the cost of betrayal and the strength it takes to rebuild after losing everything. As time passed, both Emma and Mark slowly adjusted to their new realities. For Emma, every day was a battle between hope and resignation. She wanted to believe that one day Mark might let her back into his life, but she also understood that his forgiveness didn't guarantee a second chance. Emma threw herself into self-improvement. She attended workshops, joined support groups for individuals who had experienced or committed infidelity, and rebuilt relationships with friends she had neglected over the years. Her therapist helped her confront the deeper issues she had been avoiding: the fear of vulnerability, the need for external validation, and the dissatisfaction she felt within herself, not just her marriage. Meanwhile, Mark was on his own journey. He explored the things he had given up while focusing on their marriage. He rediscovered his love for hiking and took spontaneous trips with friends, something he hadn't done in years. These experiences reminded him of who he was before Emma and who he could be again. Though the wounds were still fresh, they both found moments of clarity and growth. Emma realized she couldn't hinge her happiness on Mark's forgiveness or a potential reconciliation. Her happiness had to come from within. Months turned into a year, and their interactions remained minimal, limited to occasional updates about mutual friends or shared responsibilities. The distance between them allowed both to heal in ways they hadn't expected. One evening, Emma received an email from Mark. The subject line was simple: "Thank you." Her heart raced as she opened it. "Emma, I've been thinking a lot about the past year. It's been a difficult road, but I wanted to let you know that I've come to a place of peace. I've forgiven you, not for your sake, but for mine. Holding on to the pain wasn't helping me grow, it was keeping me stuck. I also want to thank you, not for what happened, but for how you've handled yourself since. I've seen the changes in you, and I respect the work you've done to become a better person. It's not something everyone has the strength to do. That being said, I think it's best we continue to move forward separately. I'll always cherish the good times we had, but I believe we're meant to walk different paths now. I wish you nothing but happiness and fulfillment in the future. You deserve that, as do I. Take care, Mark." Tears blurred Emma's vision as she read the message. It wasn't the outcome she had hoped for, but it was the closure she needed. She wrote back, expressing her gratitude for his honesty and wishing him the best in return. In the weeks that followed, Emma felt a strange mix of grief and relief. She mourned the life they had shared but found solace in knowing that Mark would be okay, and so would she. Eventually, Emma moved to a new city, starting fresh in every sense. She pursued a career change, one that aligned with her newfound sense of purpose. Along the way, she met people who enriched her life in ways she never expected, including a man who taught her what it meant to build a relationship on trust, transparency, and mutual respect. Mark, too, found happiness. Through his own healing, he met someone who reignited his belief in love. Together, they built a relationship free of the shadows of the past. Though their lives took separate paths, Both Emma and Mark carried the lessons of their shared history. Their story was no longer defined by betrayal but by growth, resilience, and the power of forgiveness. It was a painful chapter, but it became the foundation for the next, and far better, chapters of their lives. Years passed, and the scars of their past softened into faint memories. Emma and Mark rarely crossed paths, but when they did, it was with a quiet understanding. There were no lingering grudges, just mutual respect for the people they had become. Emma's life had taken a beautiful turn. In her new city, she found a sense of purpose she never knew she needed. She worked at a nonprofit dedicated to helping others rebuild their lives after personal struggles, something she deeply related to. It was there that she met Daniel, a kind-hearted and patient man who admired her resilience and determination. Their relationship blossomed slowly, built on open communication and unwavering honesty. For the first time in her life, Emma felt what it meant to love and be loved without fear or pretense. She shared her past with Daniel, laying bare the mistakes she had made and the lessons she had learned. Instead of judgment, Daniel offered understanding. Mark, too, was thriving. His new partner, Sophie, was a source of light in his life. She was compassionate, grounded, and shared his love for adventure. Together, they explored the world, hiking trails, and creating memories that felt like a second chance at the happiness he once thought he had lost. One day, fate brought Emma and Mark back together in an unexpected way. A mutual friend was hosting a charity event, and both were invited. When Emma arrived with Daniel by her side, she immediately spotted Mark across the room, laughing with Sophie. For a moment, Emma hesitated. Seeing him happy stirred a mix of emotions: relief, nostalgia, and a touch of bittersweet longing. But then she felt Daniel squeeze her hand, grounding her in the present. Mark noticed her and walked over with Sophie. The four of them exchanged polite greetings, the atmosphere surprisingly warm. There was no tension, no awkwardness, only a quiet acknowledgement of how far they had come. "I'm glad to see you doing well," Mark said to Emma, his smile genuine. "You too?" Emma replied, her heart lighter than she expected. As the evening went on, Emma found herself reflecting on how different everything felt. The pain and regret that once consumed her had been replaced by gratitude for the growth it had spurred. She no longer saw Mark as the man she had hurt, but as someone who had helped shape her journey. Mark, too, felt a sense of peace. Seeing Emma with Daniel, happy and fulfilled, confirmed what he already knew. They had both made the right choice in moving on. By the end of the night, Emma and Mark exchanged a final, meaningful glance. It wasn't a goodbye, but a silent promise to keep living the lives they had worked so hard to rebuild. As Emma and Daniel walked out into the cool evening air, she took a deep breath, feeling the weight of the past finally lift. Her life was no longer defined by a single mistake, but by the strength she had found in its aftermath. And as Mark held Sophie close on their way home, he, too, felt a sense of closure. They had both found happiness, not in the ruins of their old life, but in the promise of new beginnings. The chapter had closed, but it wasn't the end. It was a testament to the resilience of the human heart, capable of breaking, healing, and finding love again. As Emma and Daniel's relationship deepened, she often found herself reflecting on how far she had come. Daniel was everything she had never realized she needed: calm, steady, and endlessly supportive. Their love was simple yet profound, built not on grand gestures, but on small, everyday moments that reminded her of what it meant to be truly seen and valued. One sunny Saturday morning, while they were sipping coffee on their balcony, Daniel surprised her by reaching for her hand. "Emma," he began, his voice steady but full of emotion, "I know we've both had pasts that shaped us, but I want you to know you've brought nothing but joy to my life. I don't just see the person you are now, I see the strength it took to become her. I love you for all of it, and I want to spend the rest of my life with you." He pulled a small box from his pocket and opened it, revealing a simple yet elegant ring. Emma's breath caught in her throat. Tears welled up as she realized how profoundly loved she was, flaws and all. "Yes," she whispered, nodding. 1,000 times yes. The next few months were a whirlwind of planning a small, intimate wedding surrounded by their closest friends and family. Among the guests was Mark, who had become a silent yet supportive presence in Emma's new life. When she sent him the invitation, she wasn't sure if he'd accept, but he did. On the day of the wedding, as Emma walked down the aisle, her heart was full. She locked eyes with Daniel, her future, and felt nothing but gratitude for the journey that had led her here. After the ceremony, Mark approached her during the reception, his own partner, Sophie, by his side. "Congratulations, Emma," he said with a warm smile. "You deserve this happiness." "Thank you," she replied, her voice steady. "And thank you for being here. It means more than you know." Mark nodded, and for a moment, they stood there in comfortable silence, two people who had weathered a storm and emerged stronger on the other side. Later that evening, Emma and Daniel danced under a canopy of stars, their laughter echoing into the night. She rested her head on his shoulder, her heart light and full of hope. Across the room, Mark watched for a moment before turning back to Sophie, who was laughing with a group of friends. He squeezed her hand and smiled, feeling a deep sense of peace. For both Emma and Mark, this was the true ending, not one of bitterness or regret, but of acceptance, growth, and the ability to embrace the beauty of what lay ahead. Their stories had diverged long ago, but in their own ways, they had both found their happily ever after. As the years unfolded, Emma and Daniel's life together flourished. They built a home filled with warmth, laughter, and love. Their marriage wasn't perfect, no relationship was, but they approached challenges with honesty and partnership. Each disagreement was an opportunity to learn, each triumph a shared joy. Emma never forgot the lessons from her past, and they became a cornerstone of her life with Daniel. They made it a priority to communicate openly, even about the hard things. The trust between them grew stronger with every passing year, unshakable in the face of life's inevitable tests. One of those tests came when Emma found out she was pregnant. The news filled her with joy and trepidation. Though she was excited to become a mother, part of her worried if she could live up to the love and stability a child needed. Daniel, as always, reassured her. "You've already shown me the strength of your heart, Emma. Our child will be so lucky to have you as a mother." When their daughter, Lily, was born, Emma felt a kind of love she had never known before. Holding the tiny bundle in her arms, she promised herself that she would always be the example of honesty, resilience, and compassion she wanted Lily to grow up with. Meanwhile, Mark and Sophie had their own milestones. They welcomed a son, Ethan, into their lives. Parenthood brought Mark a sense of purpose and joy he hadn't realized he was missing. He often reflected on how different his life had become, how far he had come from the man who once thought betrayal had ruined him. As life would have it, their paths crossed again, this time through their children. Lily and Ethan attended the same school and became fast friends, their bond innocent and untainted by the history between their parents. At a school event one afternoon, Emma and Mark found themselves standing side by side, watching their children play together. "Looks like they're inseparable," Mark said with a small laugh, gesturing to Lily and Ethan sharing crayons at a craft table. Emma smiled, a mixture of nostalgia and contentment washing over her. "It's funny how life works, isn't it? I never imagined us standing here, like this." Mark nodded, his expression thoughtful. "Life has a way of surprising us. I think maybe it's the universe reminding us that some connections aren't meant to be erased, just reshaped." They exchanged a knowing glance, neither needing to say more. What they had shared was a part of their story, but it no longer defined them. They had moved on, found happiness, and created lives full of love and meaning. Over time, their interactions became more frequent, though always casual. School events, birthday parties, and playdates brought their families together in unexpected ways. What once might have been awkward now felt natural, even pleasant. Both Emma and Mark had grown into people they could respect, not just for what they had overcome, but for the way they had chosen to live after the pain. Their relationship, once fractured and broken, had evolved into something rare, a quiet friendship rooted in mutual understanding and shared growth. In the end, it wasn't just about forgiveness or moving on. It was about building new lives without erasing the past, about creating a better future without denying the lessons learned along the way. And as Emma watched Lily and Ethan laughing together on the playground, she felt nothing but gratitude for the journey, the mistakes, and the second chances that had led her to this moment of peace.